Can Made in Europe give the EU's economy a boost? This is Macro Matters, and we're talking industrial policy in Europe. Long a taboo phrase, the EU is planning to change course with rules that will require projects that get public funding to use materials manufactured in the EU. The plans aim to cover strategic sectors like batteries, wind and solar energy, nuclear power and electric vehicles. Holger Schmieding is chief economist at Berenberg. Holger, this sort of policy was long considered too protectionist by many European countries, including Germany and the Netherlands. What changes have made this possible now?
Well, to some extent, we've realized across Europe, including Germany and Northern Europe, that we need some degree of strategic autonomy. We cannot be dangerously dependent on unreliable partners. But the problem is that some other countries are trying to mix genuine protectionism with this strategic prerogative, and that makes the negotiations so difficult. There are some signs, put it that way, a lot of pressure from Brussels that we may be close to an agreement, but I don't think it's a done deal yet. Would it make a major difference? Probably not. As long as we have some protectionist elements in there, you can argue that the protectionist elements, which actually mean that inputs for some of our industries get more expensive and hence undermine the competitiveness of these industries, that those negative elements may be as important as the positive elements. So net, it may actually not make a huge difference.
As you mentioned, this agreement was expected this week, but it's got bogged down in delays. How did it get stuck?
Well, because the major differences are unresolved. How protectionist should it be? And, well, how precisely should it be applied? There is a lot of talk about various sectors. Are solar panels a sector where we really need strategic autonomy? We do need some strategic autonomy in critical raw materials, clearly. We need it in stuff for our defense, where we're no longer sure that in the long run we can get it from the US and definitely not from China. But there is a lot of work on the details to tilt sort of the balance, hopefully, between genuine protectionism and genuinely justified strategic autonomy for some strategic key sectors, to tilt the balance, hopefully, the right way, not towards too much protectionism.
Are European manufacturers ready to replace foreign suppliers in these sectors?
Well, probably in some of these sectors, not really, or not at the cheap cost at which we could get the stuff from abroad. In my view, the better approach would be to first identify where do we really need some degree of strategic autonomy, and then see how we can get there. That may be protectionist measures, that may be something like the Made in Europe initiative, that may be subsidies here and there. In my view, this is not yet the draft that we've seen so far, is not yet the perfect solution to. Yes, we need to be more independent, but we also need to make sure that in the non-critical sectors, our companies and our consumers get cheap goods from abroad.
This comes, of course, after the EU has postponed the ratification of a trade deal with the US, which was criticised for giving the US too much leverage after the Supreme Court threw out the rationale for President Trump's tariffs. Where does the EU go from here in its trading relationship with Washington?
First of all, the EU now needs to wait what happens in the US. Is it a 10% universal tariff? Is it going to be the 15% universal tariff? If it's 10%, then we could say, oh, that's actually better than the deal we had. Great, let's stick with that. If it's 15%, it would mean that for some goods, the tariffs in the US would be higher than under the deal that we struck sort of at Turnberry last July with the US. Then we would have a significant need to renegotiate with the US. All in all, I would say this Supreme Court decision weakens the position of Trump. It strengthens the negotiating position of others, including the EU. But still, we need Trump for Ukraine. That is, we cannot drive too hard a bargain. In the end, whatever comes out of it will remain somewhat lopsided towards Trump's interests, simply because we need US support for Ukraine for as long as we can get it.
Washington, though, says it rejects attempts by the EU to prioritise European companies in fields like supplying arms to Ukraine. Could that be a problem if trade renegotiations are now on the table?
That could be a problem, but it should not be a problem, in the sense that at least immediately, right now for Ukraine, we simply need the best weapons available. Doesn't matter from where they are. A European preference, which could potentially mean that deliveries to Ukraine are delayed or not of the best quality would be self-defeating for Europe on the battlefield. So I think we should not mix these two things.
That was Holger Schmieding of Berenberg. Don't forget you can watch more videos on Reuters.com.